Wait, hold on a minute. It's still Lovecraft month? It's been well over 30 days. Yeah? Well, let's just call it a spooky non-Euclidean month and move on with it. So, since December of the year of our Lord 2018, The Last Door has been recommended to me many times, and everyone says the same thing. It's the bee's knees, or, more fittingly, the raven's ripped out heart, or the crow's knees. It's good, okay? That's what I'm trying to get across. And I have to say, upon launching the game, I'm inclined to agree. The art direction and menu music are just mwah. The background scene is wonderfully foreboding, and to top it all off, there's a cool bird. Let's jump in. Fuck! Well, okay, I mean, I guess it's inspired by Lovecraft and Poe, so someone has to write a vague letter and then kill themselves at some point. May as well get it ticked off early. But what's really sinister about this scene is, you have to do it yourself. Like, pick up the rope, set up the chair, and so on. It's grim, but at the same time, pretty cool. Is cool the right word? Anyway, now we're playing as that guy's friend, a guy he met while studying in Scotland. Wahey. And we're going to the dead boy's house to snoop around and, presumably, hunt down some doors. Now, being a Lovecraftian point-and-click adventure game, you may expect there to be some similarities to Scratches, and yeah, there is. But The Last Door does one major thing differently. It doesn't waste any time. In Scratches, go and unpack your stuff, call Jerry, set up your typewriter, look for candles. But in The Last Door, hang yourself! Find some crows cannibalizing each other. This! The game knows we have places to be, you know? I kinda would've preferred more build-up and more reaction from the protagonist, but other elements of the game establish the mood pretty well, so it's not so bad. Namely, the audio. So the visuals of the game might seem simplistic, but the music is better than pretty much any other horror game I've played recently. Not only because it sounds like an entire orchestra has been told to dig up Edgar Allan Poe and turn his liquefied remains into some kind of magic music slushy, but also because it fits the tone so damn well. This is kind of what I imagine Alone in the Dark wanted to sound like. But how can we talk about audio without mentioning an adventure game staple? The screeches of a dying crow! So, for whatever reason, you pick up the crow that was being cannibalized or killed by a cat or something else. Basically, this bird is having a rough one, and you put it in your pocket, and well, it just kind of screams at you, like some kind of nightmare Tamagotchi. And it's just horrifying, but, like, nice horrifying. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to sound effects. They truly went above and beyond to creep you the hell out. Just listen to this fucking record. Oh, while I'm back on the subject of music, it does the same thing as Scratches, where occasionally the music will stop, leaving you in, dare I say, discomfort before starting again. If you were looking at the game's art style and thinking you couldn't get immersed, don't worry, the sound effects more than compensate. Be it tapping on glass, the distant moan of an unknown beast, or the creaking of old floorboards, y'all gonna be spooked. So one of the things I mention most when talking about Lovecraftian media is the writing, and shock and horror, there are words in this game. Quite a few, to be quite honest. However, I can't say that the writing is particularly accurate to the style of HPL or Poe. Not that it has to be, it's just that The Last Door is quite concise when it comes to its notes and storytelling, and Lovecraft wasn't. He could turn 10 words into 100 and not even be half done. But the actual content of the writing is on point, so it's all good. Now, after shenaniganing around the house, we move on to the second chapter, which will hopefully begin in a less viscerally disturbing way than the last. God damn it. I actually love these sections of the game where you play as people who have clearly lost their minds. Not only is it a cool way of breaking up the main gameplay sections, but it also evokes stories like The Call of Cthulhu, where the main narrative is filled with anecdotes and diaries of people who have been exposed to madness. To put it simply, it's good. Now, the second chapter introduces some new things like more flowery language and dialogue options, and brings back a lot of the first chapter's staples like the horrific noises and the cool top hat. It might seem strange that I'm noting the differences between chapters, but I'm doing it because, from what I've gathered, the game was developed and released in chunks, or episodically if you enjoy less vague phrases, and it's important in episodic media to note any differences or inconsistencies, but so far, it's still spooky, and I've still got my top hat. A+. Also in this chapter, we steal from nuns and tell them that God isn't real, so I guess we can take off the irreligion part of Lovecraft. Though, I think we take our nun bashing a little bit too far. Like, we sneak up behind this lady and blast some tunes. Heh, take that, you square. Pranked! Oh. She walked into the ocean. Haha, we're gonna make the Virgin Mary look like she's crying. Pranked! Oh, she has PTSD now. And the patient's been kidnapped. Pranked! If you followed me for a while, you'll know that I have a certain enthusiasm for the word ominous. And boy, this gets ominous. Don't look into his eyes. That hits the double whammy of ominous and poor social etiquette. Spooky stuff. Oh, and also the necrophilia film. That exists. Let's move on. Episode 3 starts in a jolly way. And then follows that up with some classic parental trauma. Wow, this really knows the source material. In fact, this game does something really interesting. So, as you'll know if you've read a lot of Lovecraft, he enjoyed writing himself into his stories. Not literally per se, but close enough. And some Lovecraftian media does this too, but typically they only focus on the negative aspects of Lovecraft. His fears, his insecurities, his bigotry, etc. But The Last Door is the first example I've seen that explores the thing that Lovecraft took comfort in. His friends. That might sound weird, but Lovecraft had a pretty close network of friends and peers that shared his love of the macabre. I know it's odd to picture Lovecraft as anything but a hermit, but that wasn't the case. There are entire tomes dedicated to documenting what remains of his written conversations, and in those he shows compassion, humor, mentorship, and most importantly, humanity. Without his friends, I don't think he'd be known today. And without him, his friends would have lived very different lives. Anyway, the protagonist here has the same rough parentage, but finds solace not in religion or wealth or knowledge, but in his peers, his acquaintances, his friends. I mean, it does not end well, but it's a nice gesture nonetheless. I'm in a city. Is it Aberdeen? Nah, it's way too nice to be Aberdeen. I've spoken a lot about ominous words and ominous phrases before, but this game introduced me to a new concept. Ominous actions. I've experienced them before in other games, but The Last Door really makes you think about it. Like, why does this recorded laugh turn into horrific wailing if you turn it off and on again? And why is this door barred from the outside? And why am I taking the bar off? I really like the feeling of, oh, that was probably a mistake, and this happens quite a few times. On a similar note, let's talk about the game's aesthetics. Them's pixels. Nice pixels. I know a lot of people aren't interested in the whole retro look, and usually I'm the same, but while writing this, I came to a grand realization. How did Lovecraft describe his spookies? Vaguely. And how does pixel art represent things? Also, vaguely. I don't think that's a coincidence. Well, maybe it is. It probably is. Using an art style to mirror the descriptions of the source material is just... mwah. It's not even an approach that I'd considered before. This game really is something special. In fact, I'd say that this game is far and away the most faithfully Lovecraftian game I've played, even more so than something like Scratches. The pacing, delivery, and tone is so spot on. Do I think it's the best Lovecraftian game, though? Well... yes. Yes, I do. That's... odd. I mean, it's still tied with STALKER because they cover the two approaches to Lovecraftian media, diegetic and non-diegetic. Diegetic as in STALKER, which just focuses on embracing the world and atmosphere, and non-diegetic like The Last Door, which may as well be a straight-up adaptation from book to game, complete with a formatting and narrative style. Both adhere to the themes, but are fundamentally fairly different. And both are valid, and both are good. On the topic of faithful adaptations, I just want to say that the third chapter of the game is probably my favorite, because it is so similar to my favorite of H.P. Lovecraft's stories, one called Nyarlathotep. Weird show in weird city that gets weird and is weird. I'd elaborate more on the details of the story, but that would spoil both of them, and... nah, I'm not gonna do that. Go and read the story, it's like 3 pages long. Anyway, y'all like jump scares? Because this game has many, and they're fucking horrible. In a fine way. I don't say they're horrible in a good way because, you know, heart palpitations, they always come when you've forgotten about them and then boom, rat boy. Jump scares have always been a controversial subject, but I reckon they can be okay. Like... you see? It's pretty good. The way the game delivers most of its horror, though, is through the same method as Scratches, by forcing you to confront the spookies through pointing and or clicking. Watch my Scratches review for more details. Other than being a horror game, it's also a puzzly boy. So, how are the puzzles? They're fine. That's all. Nothing too absurd, no moon logic, and only one puzzle made me go, what? And it involves a light bulb and a slaughtered deer. The difficulty was definitely manageable, and that's good. I usually enjoy a challenge in my games, but when the emphasis is on the story and the format, I don't so much mind. Anyway, after 4 chapters, the game ends, on a delicious cliffhanger, ending with a little over 3 hours of playtime. That might seem short, because it is, but don't worry, there's a sequel, and more importantly, there's extras, and the extras are good. They're pretty short though, you'll get through them in about 10 minutes. Anyway, that's the Last Door. It was spectacular. I don't really have any issues with it. It got Lovecraft right, provided a solid narrative, and was overall a fantastic game. Among the best, actually. Maybe the best. Crikey. I should listen to you guys more often. Anyway, I was gonna cover both parts, but as you can tell, this turned out a little bit longer than expected. I'll get to that one eventually, but next time I'll be covering another game that has been requested a lot. I'll see you then. But if you want to keep up with me in the meantime, please follow me on Twitter at PainticusYT, on Twitch at twitch.tv/Painticus, and if you enjoy these videos for some twisted and evil reason, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Painticus. I'd like to especially thank a patron by the name of Manwords84, and also a big thank you to the other patrons who are listed in the description. Currently, if you have some money and you hate yourself, and you also hate the money that you have because you hate yourself, you can go on my Patreon and find an old video I made back in 2016, which was a really shit Dark Souls 3 PvP tutorial, but it was like a parody. Oh god, it's bad. But yeah, it's there, you can go and see it if you like. Anyway, enough self-loathing. Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Patreon, all those things, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.